I was returning from my friend's house after an enjoyable evening. It was close to midnight, and darkness enveloped everything. I walked with heavy steps, feeling tired and exhausted. Suddenly, I felt an urgent need to relieve myself. I didn't see any public restrooms nearby, so I headed towards a deserted place that was a bit far away. I entered the place and opened the door cautiously. Silence filled the place, and I heard nothing but the creaking of the door. I finished my business and then washed my hands and face. As I was about to leave, the lights suddenly went out. Darkness enveloped me, and I felt a great fear. I tried to turn on my phone, but the battery was dead. I imagined ghosts trying to reach me, and I heard strange sounds coming from every corner. My fear grew, and I began to tremble from the intensity of the terror. I didn't know what to do. I stood there, listening to the strange sounds, and eagerly awaiting the dawn. After what seemed like an eternity, the first rays of dawn began to appear on the horizon. I breathed a sigh of relief and rushed out of the place. I didn't look back, and I didn't stop until I reached my house. Since that day, I have never gone back to that place again. I still remember that terrifying night as if it happened yesterday. Before we continue, if you liked the video, subscribe to the channel and share the video so we can continue creating more stories. I worked as a truck driver, transporting goods from one city to another. One night, I was delayed on my way home due to heavy traffic. I decided to take a different route than usual, thinking it would save me some time. It was pitch black, and I could only see the headlights of my car illuminating the road in front of me. Suddenly, a faint light in the distance caught my attention. I stopped driving and took a closer look. The light was moving slowly, disappearing and reappearing at times. I felt a strange fear, and a feeling that something was wrong took hold of me. This is the first part of the story that you have already provided. I am ready to translate the next part if you have it. I started to accelerate the truck, trying to get away from the mysterious light. But the light was following me, as if it wanted to send me a message. I reached a residential area and stopped driving. I got out of the truck and looked back. I didn't see the light anywhere. I felt relieved, but fear still gripped me. I got back in the truck and continued on my way home. I couldn't sleep that night. The image of the mysterious light haunted me, stirring up feelings of fear and terror in me. The next day, I asked some of the locals about that light. They told me that the area was known for paranormal phenomena, and that many people had seen strange things there. I never drove on that road again. I still remember that terrifying night as if it happened yesterday. I lived in a small village on the edge of a dense forest. One night, I had to travel to a distant city to attend the funeral of a relative. I set out on my journey late at night, and I didn't want to rent a cart, for fear of the expense. I decided to walk that long distance, relying on the moonlight to guide me. Things went well at first. The sky was clear, and the stars lit the path ahead of me. But as time passed, the darkness grew, and fear began to creep into my heart. I heard strange sounds coming from the depths of the forest, and I felt like there were eyes watching me from the darkness. I tried to ignore my fears and keep walking. Suddenly, a faint light in the distance caught my attention. I stopped walking and took a closer look. The light was moving slowly, disappearing and reappearing at times. I felt a strange fear, and a feeling that something was wrong. I started to quicken my pace, trying to get away from the mysterious light. but the light was following me, as if it wanted to send me a message. I reached a fork in the road, and I didn't know which way to go. I stopped for a moment, wondering what to do. Suddenly, I heard the sound of footsteps behind me. I turned quickly, but I didn't see anyone. My fear increased, and I began to tremble from the intensity of the terror. I didn't know what to do, or where to go. My fear grew, and I felt trapped in that desolate place. Suddenly, I heard the sound of footsteps approaching me. Turning quickly, I saw an old man holding an oil lamp. I asked him fearfully, "Do you know a way out of this forest?" The old man smiled and said, "Don't be afraid, son. I'll help you get out of here." The old man took me by the hand, and together we walked deep into the forest. It was pitch dark, but the light of the lamp was illuminating the path for us. After a long and arduous journey, we reached a paved road. The old man pointed to the road and said, "This road will take you to the city. Go in peace, and never return to this forest again." I thanked the old man for his help and set off on my way to the city. I never thought of returning to that forest again, and I never forgot the kindness of the old man who saved my life. I set off on my way to the city, quickening my pace with fear and terror. I didn't think about anything but reaching a safe place. After an hour of walking, I began to see the city lights in the distance. I felt a great sense of relief, as if I had escaped from a deadly hell. I finally reached the city and entered the first house I found open. I explained to the owner of the house what had happened to me, and he welcomed me with kindness and gave me shelter and food. The next day, I thanked the owner of the house for his help and asked him about the old man who helped me in the forest. But he told me that he had not seen any old man in that area. I didn't believe what the owner of the house said, but I didn't know what to do. I decided to travel to the city I was traveling to and forget what happened to me that night. But I never forgot that terrifying night. I still remember the sounds of fear and terror, and the feeling of loneliness and despair that took hold of me. Every time I see a forest, I remember that terrifying journey and feel a vague sense of dread. I was a lover of adventures and challenges, and I was always looking for new experiences that would excite my passion. One day, I decided to take a trip to the desert in my old car. I took a deserted road, far from the main roads, enjoying the stunning scenery and the absolute silence. Suddenly, my attention was drawn to an old woman standing on the side of the road. She was wearing a black abaya that covered her entire body, and I couldn't see her face clearly because of the headscarf that covered her head. I felt a great curiosity to know if this woman needed help, so I stopped my car and approached her. When I reached her, I asked, "Are you okay? Do you need help?" The woman did not answer my question, but looked at me with a strange, frightening look. Her eyes were gleaming with a strange yellow color, and her mouth was smiling a wide smile that showed her yellow, decaying teeth. I felt a great fear, but I couldn't back down. I asked her again, "Where are you going? Do you want me to take you?" The woman nodded and walked slowly towards my car. I opened the back door for her and she got in quietly. I got into my car and looked at the woman in the rearview mirror. She was still looking at me with a strange, frightening look. I tried to ignore her and started driving. It was very quiet and I could only hear the sound of my car engine. Suddenly, I heard a strange sound coming from the back seat. It was a sound similar to a scream, but it was muffled and disjointed. I looked at the woman in the rearview mirror, but I didn't see any movement or change in her expression. I felt a great fear and started sweating from the intensity of the fear. The strange sounds continued to appear from time to time, which increased my sense of fear and anxiety. I tried to talk to the woman, but she didn't answer any of my questions. Time passed very slowly, and I felt like I had been driving for hours. I couldn't take that feeling of fear and terror anymore, so I decided to stop at the first village I found. After a while of driving, I saw the lights of a village in the distance. I felt a little hopeful, so I increased my speed. I arrived at the village and stopped at the first shop I found. I got out of my car and went to the shopkeeper. I told him my story and what happened to me with the old woman. He listened to me attentively, and when I finished my story, he said to me, "My son, you have fallen into the trap of a desert jinn. This road has been haunted since ancient times. That jinn tricks travelers and convinces them to take her to her destination, then she kills them and disappears into the desert." I felt a great fear and started to tremble from the intensity of the fear. I couldn't utter a single word. The shopkeeper asked me, "Is the woman still in your car?" I nodded, unable to speak. He said to me, "Don't worry, I'll help you. But you have to be careful and never look back." I left the shop with the owner and we headed to my car. When we arrived, we couldn't find the old woman in the back seat. We searched the car thoroughly, but we couldn't find any trace of her. I felt some relief, but I was still feeling scared and anxious. I thanked the shopkeeper for his help and set off again on my way. I no longer dared to take that deserted road, but returned to the main road, afraid to face that jinn again. I never forgot that night and what happened to me with the old woman. I became more cautious on my trips and no longer dared to take deserted roads, especially at night.